to it with this coworker, or you're saying something about that coworker, and it's like, man, please make them stop, right? But that workplace, all of us have to deal with it. We go to work, we have that one person on that job that knows how to just push those buttons, that pushes that button to say, hey, if I didn't value this job so much, if I didn't need to take care of my family, this situation would be totally different. But as believers, how do we deal with that when there's a troublemaker on the job? What if the troublemaker is your boss? Your actual boss is the one that's causing the problems and keeping the confusion and everything going on. I remember being in the workforce for the years that many years that I have. There have been several times where I've worked with people that it's like you would think that the boss or the supervisor would be the greatest example to how to do this thing, or they would be the ones that would set the pace for how we're supposed to act as employees. And sometimes I've experienced over the years that my supervisors have been the worst ones to interact with. When you are dealing with a insecure supervisor, man, I'm telling you, it can make for a very rough place at the workplace there. A supervisor that doesn't have any real confidence in themselves, and so they push their insecurities off on you. It's like a secure. So I've worked for supervisors over the years that it's been hard for them to encourage and build people up. And instead of bringing people together, they were dividers. And it's a rough thing when the people at the top are the ones that, like I said, that are causing most of the relational problems and that kind of thing. I believe at the workplace, we are all getting paid to come here to do a job, right? And then let's be real, there are a lot of people that you're not gonna go on vacation with, your coworkers you're not gonna go on vacation with. Because maybe y'all don't vibe like that. But as long as for the believer, as long as there's nothing personal in the sense of where, I hate this person, or to the point to where, hey, to some levels, people that make you so mad and they push your buttons to where you even want to put hands on some of your coworkers. And it's like, that ain't what God wants for his kids, right? We have to find ways to be able to recognize what's going on in the environment in the workplace, and be able to still represent the banner of the Lord, hold up the banner of the Lord, in the process of that. And it's tough, when people, they come in with a ton of baggage, they come in with life issues and challenges. And like I said, you would think just out of the motivation of getting paid that they would drop some of that down. But I've worked in environments. I've worked in places where it's like we call it a toxic environment, to where it was just, it was an extreme toxic environment. To the point to where it's like, hey, you didn't even want to. There was times where, hey, like I said, if it wasn't for the money, you wouldn't even want to go to work and be around that that environment and that type of thing. So over the years, there was times where I felt like, okay, it's time for me to get away from this job, because the relationships, like there was no relationship, there was no real care, or there was no real interaction with each other. It was just strictly, hey, you're my coworker, and it's like when you punch in, I have to talk to you. When we punch in, I have to talk to you. When I punch out, I don't have to talk to you anymore. So it is like that. That's not. I don't believe that's the way God intended for us to live, but it's like those workplace relationships. You have to work hard to make sure that you stay above water when it comes to those type of things. And then hope and prayer would be that you would have the type of leader, that your leaders would be mature leaders, to the point that they would recognize and understand that, hey, we're not going to tolerate, we're not going to have this. This is not going to go on in our workplace. I really believe this is true. When teams in the workplace, when they have a mutual respect for one another and they value what each other brings to the table, I believe that team is more productive versus the teams that, they're like, so they're jealous of each other. They don't believe the best in each other. They're gossiping behind each other's back. They're putting each other down. They're not really cheering for one another. They're looking for the other's failure and downfall and those type of things. Those teams are the most non-productive, and so it's like, yeah, in the workplace environment, as a believer, I really believe this is true. You have to really ask the Lord, Lord, when you got that person, that troublemaker, that busybody that's always causing problems at work. My prayer, there have been times where I've prayed that God would remove the people from if they're not going to bring joy and peace and just harmony and unity to the position or to the job. I pray. There have been times over the years where I pray that, Father, in the name of Jesus, that if they're not going to be for the betterment for us, Father, I pray that you will remove them. And there's been times without fail, God, I believe God, He gives you, when it comes to those relational things, He gives you opportunity to grow. He gives you opportunity to learn from people. He gives you opportunity to, another way to say this, kind of get your act together. But then after a while, if there's no real change or if it's not happening, I've seen people get removed from just out of the nowhere. The company say, "Hey, your services are not needed anymore." And a lot of it has been because I've watched people walk out the door, get walked out the door. A lot of it because not that they didn't have the skills to do the job. I mean, matter of fact, they could have been very good at their job, but it's those relational things. It's that getting along with people. It's just as knowing how to keep your name out of mess and keep your name out of trouble have been the things that have kind of walked them out of their job and things. So that's the workplace. What about relationships in your family? All those family relationships. I heard a guy say one time, he says, nobody can hurt you more than when a family member hurts you, whether it's they've said inappropriate things or they've done something inappropriate to you, or they just, just downright just didn't disrespected you or dishonored you as a person. I hear stories all the time. Being a pastor, you hear it comes across your desk so many times of family members not getting along. Brothers and sisters haven't talked in years. Mom and parents and their kids haven't talked. I believe this is true. I grew up in a super large family, so I was always kind of used to there being a lot of people around. And of course, if there's a lot of people around, and that's a lot of different opinions that you're going to receive, especially from the older ones when you were younger, from the older ones to the younger ones. There are a lot of opinions that you're going to hear and thoughts about your life. Hey, why are you doing this? Or why are you acting like that? Or why are you dressed like that? Why are you saying this? Why do you want to move over here? Why do you want to go? All of that. And sometimes if you're not careful, that stuff can really bother you, if, in the sense of where, like if you're a sensitive person, there's nothing wrong with being a sensitive person. But sometimes even with family members, and let's be real, y'all, they get out of bounds with the way they talk. They talk too much, and they talk about things that they have no business really talking about. How are you going to speak on somebody else's life about the choices and the decisions that they make or want for their own lives, and you don't have your own life together? When it comes to family members, sometimes in love, you got to let them know, hey, look, if I want your opinion, I'll ask you for it, and if I don't ask you for it, then hey, you got to be wise enough to know, hey, Junior ain't asking me for my advice on whatever topic or whatever situation that is, and I need to learn how to back up and leave it alone, right? But family members, I've watched over the years when it comes to relationships, they can say the most dumb things at the most inopportune time that causes all kind of problems, right? I want to encourage the parents with this. Sometimes as parents, and I've been guilty of this, sometimes as parents, we want to, tell our kids, our kids are, when they're young, we guide them. Our job is to guide them, to instruct them, to kind of show them the way, to kind of, to teach them things that they don't know. That's our job when they're young, right? And as parents, if more parents were doing that, I believe our society and our communities would be a whole lot better off than what they are now. But when they're young, that's our job. Our job, and the Bible talks about that. Our job is to train up. The Bible says, train up a child in the way that he should go, for when he is old, he wouldn't depart. So as parents, when they're young, you should be on that 24/7 in terms of instructing your kids, showing them the way, all of that. But when they get to the point to where they become adults, right? And this is the relational piece. This is where relationships get strained when it comes to parents and the kids. Parents, you just got to know there's a time where you go from help leading their lives to where you got to come to, there'll come a time where you'll have to stop leading their life, and then you'll turn more into advising their life. You'll turn more, it'll become more of an advisory role to the lives of your kids. If your kid is 25, 30, and you're still trying to lead them like you were when they was 15 and 18 and all those type of things, that's not, it's going to put a strain on a relationship, right? You can't talk to your kid if your kid is an adult, or your child is an adult. You can't talk. I don't think it's wise to talk to them like you would if they were 10, 11, 12 years old. And I see a lot of parents, they do that. Well, I'm still mama and daddy, and well, you are still mom and daddy, but you got to use some wisdom. That young man or that young woman, they need to learn how to make decisions on their own. They need to learn how to get out there and go experience life. If you truly love them, you're gonna always be there. You're gonna be there. A lot of times to catch them when they fall. As parents, we talk a lot of smack, but for the most part, we don't want to see our kids fail. We don't want to see our kids struggle to the point to where like they have no one to help them. But then it comes into this. You have to remind you, there comes a time where, hey, little Johnny is an adult now, and mom and dad, you need to learn when to step back and allow little Johnny, I'm using little Johnny, allow little Johnny to experience life on his own. But it's when you start talking about, hey, they wouldn't do it the way you do it, or you start really, really criticizing or over critiquing their decisions on things that they do, that puts a strain on the relationship. And I've seen family members that I've watched it over the years that they don't even want to go around certain family members because all they do when they get around you, all you hear is the criticism and how you're not doing this and you're not doing that, or why are you doing this or why are you doing that? And I have to learn, sometimes you just gotta chill. You gotta learn how to chill. When I have adult children. And let's be honest, they do things sometimes I think like, okay, I probably wouldn't have did that like that, or they'll get into things and I was like, you know what, if you would have given that a little bit more thought, you probably should have turned this way instead of turning that way. But I had to learn. I tell my wife this too. I had to learn that they're adults now. And it's like they don't need me. I can't. It would be more detrimental to them as adults if they always look to me to solve as their father, that they would look to me to solve all of their problems. That wouldn't be cool, because they would never learn to grow up on their own. They would never learn to be responsible on their own. So they don't need me directing their lives, and then criticize. I was watching there was the recent movie of Michael Jackson that came out, and there were scenes in there they portrayed Mr. Jackson, Joe Jackson, as the type of father that he wanted to direct and guide his kids when they were young, which we understood. We got that when we all know the story. But when they got older and they became, Michael became the biggest superstar that ever lived, the father, there was a period of time where the father still wanted to tell him exactly how to do things and that kind of thing. It's like, yeah, you got to know when to step off, because when you, as a parent, there comes a time where I believe this is true. There comes a time where you're all in with your kids, and you, like I said, you're leading, you're guiding them, you're protecting them, you're advising them. But then there comes a time where you have to release them to become, and that's just a natural thing, to release them to become who they want to be and do the things that they want to do. But when it comes to those relationships, I've seen, when you're overly opinionated or overly critical of your kids when it comes to the family members, it can put a real strain on a relationship. You'll say something like brothers and sisters. I've watched brothers and sisters. You'll say something or critique something about your sister or your brother, and then everybody's mad, and you look around for this thing then carried on for 6 months to a year, and y'all ain't talking to each other. And those relationships, how often you think about it, how often do we practice apologizing, saying I'm sorry, or just repenting of, hey, if I hurt your feelings by saying what I said, hey man, I'm sorry, I didn't mean for it. to come out like that. Would you please forgive me, right? And then, like I said, the relationships they're hard work, but it's necessary because nobody gets along all the time. I don't believe that's reality either, where you're in relationship with people and you get along with them all. It don't work like that. I have a best friend. My best friend, he's a pastor now, Pastor Terry Kelly. He and I have been friends since we were probably 14 years old. And it's so interesting. We growing up, we hung out a lot, did a lot of things together, had a lot of fun. But I realized there were times in our friendship that we were ready to go to blows because of disagreements and things that we've had, right? And I mean, there would be times where I would say something and he would get so mad, or vice versa. He would say something to me like, "Man, who do you think you're talking to?" Just that, I can't believe you would challenge me like that, or I can't believe that I challenged him like that. But what it was, we had built equity up in our relationship, to where, what I mean by build equity, he knew and understood that, hey, I wanted what was best for him. And I really believe in knowing that this is true, that he wants what's best for me. So but that doesn't mean that we have to agree on everything, or we have to agree on how things are supposed to go all the time, right? So there've been times I look back on it and we laugh about it now, but there's been times where I was like, man, that move that you just made right there, that was probably one of the dumbest things that I've ever heard of, right? And then he would say to me, like, I would give him some thoughts or some things that I was thinking about getting into, things that I wanted to do, and he would look at me like, man, you crazy for thinking that's going to work, that kind of thing. And there have been times where, hey, but we've had to get in each other's face because, hey, man, who you think you're talking to? Who you think you're talking to? But the reality is, because we had so much good relational equity built up, we were able to challenge each other. I don't want to be around people that they say yes to everything that I do, or every idea that I have, or every way that I act. They never challenge me when I'm wrong or when I'm out of bounds. Because I don't think that's healthy to have people around you. You think about all those movie stars over the years where they've had people that said yes to them all because of the money. They would never challenge them in their relationships with the things that they were doing. How many of those people you look back on and you said, okay, if they had some people in their lives to really tell them the truth about the things that they were doing, how many of those people will still be alive today, right? So with your friends, you gotta have. And then I heard another guy say, he says, man, sometimes it's not cool having everybody on your payroll either. Because if everybody's on your payroll, then they're not going to tell you the truth about yourself, and then you're going to have a false relationship versus a real relationship, a real caring, loving, hey, I'm there for you, I want you to be here for me type of relationship. So with my best friend, which I appreciate those relationships the most, because he's able to say to me, hey, that ain't right. I'm able to say to him, hey, that's the craziest idea I ever heard you say, but we're still able we're able to fall out without falling out. And when you get to that place, that comes through building and spending time and working hard and investing in that relationship. I love that phrase, you can fall out. When you get to the place to where you can fall out without falling out. And then, of course, in a marriage, in a relational, what better way to express, love, caring and support and encouragement than in a marriage. I've seen marriages over the years. One of the things that I really believe that led up many, many marriages to the divorce court is that, number one, they stop investing in their relationship. They start growing careless in the way that they treated one another. And I told this story before on the program. Jerry Jones, the owner of the Dallas Cowboys, he bought the team in 1989, and the team was, at that time, they were at the bottom of the barrel in terms of winning. I think they were 1-15 their first year, right? And so he hired one of his best friends from college, Jimmy Johnson, the coach of the Miami Hurricanes, to come in and coach the Dallas Cowboys. Well, the short version of it is they came in, that Jerry and Jimmy, they worked together. They invested in hey, we want to make this thing successful was their goal. We want to take a team or organization that's at the bottom of the barrel, and we want to take them all the way back to the top. Well, it didn't take them long. The Cowboys went from being at the bottom of the barrel to Super Bowl champs, and the rest is in NFL history. But it took hard work. It took dedication. It took the two of those young men investing in their relationship toward each other to be able to build that sports empire to where even to this day, I think the Cowboys are worth, I don't know, maybe $11 billion now. But the interesting part about it, about 3 or 4 years into that relationship, after all the winning, after all of the success, Jerry and Jimmy couldn't get along with each other. They had got to the point to where they could hardly stand to be in the same room with one another. You may think, well, what happened to you guys are successful? You build this franchise up. You're Super Bowl champions. You're known all over the world. You're the top money earning franchise in the world, sports organization in the world. What happened? And I'll never forget this. Jerry Jones, and so Jerry and Jimmy, they did a press conference and they said, well, we mutually decided that Jimmy would no longer be the head football coach of the Dallas Cowboys. And the whole sports world was like, well, how can y'all at the top? Everybody's trying to get to where y'all are, and y'all saying y'all breaking this thing up. Well, what was happening behind the scenes is that they started bickering with each other. They started picking at one another. They started overly critiquing and criticizing the way the one another were doing the things that they were doing. And the biggest thing, they stopped having value for their relationship. And I'll never forget this. Jerry Jones, as time went on, and I'll never forget, he came out and he said this statement, and I'll never forget it. He said, when it came to he and Jimmy Johnson's relationship, he said he believed that their relationship failed because they grew careless in their relationship. And I said, growing. He said, when you grow careless in your relationship, that relationship is on the verge of being over with. How many of you watching the program today, you have relationships that were close relationships at one time, and now those relationships seem like they're going this way and still going, and a lot of it has been because you've grown careless in that relationship, careless in maybe some of the things that you said, careless in some of the ways that you act. A lack of forgiveness, that's growing careless, in the relationship, and you stop valuing and honoring that person to the point to where somebody that was once so close to you, now you guys, it's like you guys are, it's almost as if you guys have never known each other. That's what happens when we don't pay attention to our relationships and the bonding the bond that goes along with that. It takes work, hard work, building those relationships, working those things together. Hard work. Our time is up. Man, the time went quick. Our time is up. I'm Pastor Everett King on Relationships Today. Thank you for watching Real Talk. And remember, until next week, we walk by faith, not by sight. God bless you.